What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dripping Creativity Podcast. I am your host, Chris Corvan, and today we're kicking off Season 2 with somebody who has been designing not just incredible tools, but entire worlds. Before we jump in, I want to give a quick shout out to the Creative Coffee Cafe community and now Patreon supporters. Your backing is what makes all of this possible, and we've got some exciting perks lined up for you this season. From extended off the record that you will see in this later on, to some amazing other things like the Creative Catalyst seminars and so much more. Just do yourself a favor, sign up. It would mean the world to me. It would make me very happy. Now, our guest today is Andrew. Where the hell did that come from? Our guest today is Adam Bassett. Adam Bassett is a multi-talented designer, author, and illustrator whose work spans everything from crafting UX, UI tools that empower writers to bringing fictional lands to life through his detailed map designs. He is also an author with a short story collection, Digital Extremities, now available on pre-order. We are going to dive right into the intersection of design, storytelling, and world building. Adam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Yourself?
You know what? After going through all that shit, I have to cut that up a little. I'm a little winded. But you know, we're gonna make it through.
There you go.
So let's kind of just start off with your journey at the beginning. Where did kind of the entire thing from designing and storytelling, where did that kind of all start from?
The short version is that I've always been interested in art and writing. Pretty much as long as I can remember. Once I got a second to put down my N64, I would start writing like what I did not realize at the time was fanfic of the old, like the original Warrior Cats books. I somehow got super into those for a while. And then that transitioned into like the Aragon and Game of Thrones period. And all of those books had really cool maps, and I was like, I want maps for my worlds. And then I started illustrating those. I had a whole watercolor book that was just filled with like slight changes to the same map every time. Digital tools have made my life so much easier. And yeah, I mean, one thing led to another. I took those interests into college and studied creative writing and studio art and graphic design. I went through a period where I was working in marketing for a few years at my local newspaper, and then changed things up a little bit, got into UX and UI design. And that is like, if we're making a website, I'm the person who UX is the button should go here, and UI is it should have this color and these rounded corners and whatever else goes on with there. And yeah, I work for Campfire now, which is a company that makes writing software, and now we have a reading app as well. And so it's all kind of coalesced into this really interesting and strange collection of things that I'm working on that are all very related to like telling stories and building worlds, and both doing that for myself with some projects I have going on now, as well as providing tools for people to do that for themselves. So yeah, that's the streamlined version, I guess.
You know what? That's fantastic. Let's kind of talk about Campfire a little more. So the entire thing focuses on making accessible tools for writers and readers. How did you get involved in that, and B, what is kind of your contribute? Like, what do you focus on while you're doing that?
Yeah, so how I got involved is basically I went through a boot camp to learn UX and UI design. I had already kind of understood the fundamentals of graphic design, which is related but not quite the same. Different tools make different things. And just different purposes too. Like graphic design, you're often making things like static images, logos, pamphlets, like print design sometimes, things like that. Whereas with UX, UI design, that is pretty much exclusively websites, mobile apps, digital things. And they're made in very different ways. They're made for different audiences and all that kind of stuff. And so it was a the main thing that I had to learn was how to use the tools and how to find resources and what sort of the established language was, because when you go to a website for the first time, you need to be able to navigate it. You don't like, there are artsy websites, but even those have kind of a semblance of like structure that everybody is familiar with a menu or like some kind of single scroll page or something that is fairly intuitive. And then when I was looking for a job, I had previously done some volunteer work with Worldbuilding magazine, which is a free to download PDF that you can get off of that website. You can go and check out old issues there. They're still making new ones occasionally. Just a volunteer team who's making cool stuff about world building for storytelling and stuff like that. I used to run the magazine for I think 2 years, and before that I had just volunteered with them. It was always volunteer. And somebody reached out to us from Campfire when I was running it, asking if they could run an ad in the magazine, which is just a way that we kind of got our foot in the door and to talk with different people who were kind of in our audience to help spread the word about it, because we didn't have a marketing budget. So when I finished my learning how to do UX UI, I reached out to a bunch of people. I would apply to places like 8 times a day at least. And at a certain point, I remembered like, oh yeah, I have all these contacts from the magazine, and most of them did not really apply to this, but Campfire did. They didn't have any positions open, but I took a look at it and I was like, I think I could do something here. The original version that I looked at was designed basically by the developers, and they did a fine job with like getting it functional. But there's a difference between a developer making something that's functional and a designer making something. Yeah, you get the idea. So I reached out to them and I was like, hey, I know you're not looking for this, but I'm going to offer it anyway because I don't have any other leads right now. I think at the time I'd gotten to speak with like 2 other people in the field about possibly getting hired, but like one was confident they didn't have any positions open for like at least 6 months. And there was another person who like really only took my call out of a courtesy. Like they didn't even within 6 months have anything that they expected to open up. And it's gotten even worse now. Like if you're interested in UX UI design, it's an incredible field and I love it. I wouldn't change that trade-off, like the shift that I made in my career for anything. But at the same time, it's extremely competitive. Like it's awful.
Oh, for sure. Well, like even like not just UX UI, but even going back to graphic design, they're like, when I started graphic design marketing like 17 years ago now, it was already getting saturated. And now it is absolutely ridiculously oversaturated. And finding any type of gig or long-term job is absolutely impossible unless you have the connections. Like it is such a difficult field to get into. It is all about
connections.
It is
100%.
It sucks. It's horrible. As both a business owner and somebody looking for clients, I can tell you both sides suck. So then like what's you got into Campfire.
Yes.
You reached out, they're like, hey, we're going to take you. We love this. And you're like, holy shit, I did it. That was amazing. But that right there shows what you kind of have to do, because a lot of times, especially with creatives, even authors and all that, when they're releasing their books, they're like, I put it out there and somebody will find it. And you can't. You have to take those steps to actually push out and
putting it out there. You have to keep putting it in front of people. Like I said, I reached out to at minimum 8 people a day to try and get hired by somebody during that period. It's pretty much no different right now. Like I'm trying to, market this book that I'm publishing in as of the time of recording. A month from now, Digital Extremities will be out. Nobody knows who I am. This is not in an established setting that anyone cares about. Like, it's a brand new thing from somebody that realistically people are not going to take a chance on. And I have to go in understanding that I have to write a blurb that is going to capture people's interest. I have to have a cover that's going to capture people's interest. I have to talk with people like we're doing right now, so that people who are tuning in to you is, for some of them who are watching right now or maybe go through the back catalog are going to find this. And I can't just be satisfied with one interview, one outreach, one anything. You have to keep putting that stuff out there. I think this month I want to say 10 interviews lined up. And I've already spoken with some local booksellers who are going to have me for some events later in this year or early next. From the very small local bookstore to my local Barnes & Noble. And at each of those, I have to measure my expectations as well. Like, just because I get to say I'm going to be at Barnes & Noble does not mean anyone is going to give a shit. Those people are going there probably to get something specific. And so it's going to be my job to, wherever they put me, try and figure out a way to bring them in when I don't have a whole lot to offer. Even when the book is out, it is one book. There's not a lot of option there. It's not like a convention where you get to walk around and kind of find different stuff for whatever you're interested in. You're going to Barnes & Noble for a thing, and then there's this guy in the corner pestering you. And so it's a balance of trying to measure expectations while not letting that discourage you, and continuously just throwing it out, and in different ways, finding different people. One of my strengths is with written stuff and static images. I'm not good with video, and so I've been reaching out to people who do video stuff, and I'm like, hey, can we work something out here? I finally got in touch with somebody who has a very small TikTok account, and it's like, I'm not on there, you are. Thank you for taking this over there and throwing it in front of people. And it probably will do nothing, but it is something. And hopefully, there's some kind of critical mass somewhere along the line. But I also recognize there might not be, and this may go nowhere. And that's okay too, because at the end of the day, this is not my main job. This is something that I'm doing for fun, that I want to try out. I've got a couple of projects in the works, and we're going to see what happens. And that's kind of as far as I'm thinking about it.
Well, and you don't want to overextend yourself and burn yourself out, but at the same time, you want to make sure you are giving it your all, regardless of what it is.
Yep.
I think your approach is fantastic, and naturally, all of us here are going to do what we can to help, extend your circle as much as possible, because it's what we do, it's what we want to do, it's what we try to do. But actually, since we're kind of moving right into the book, there, let's kind of dive right into more of Digital Extremities here. What kind of inspired the concept of making a collection of these stories?
So I've always been really interested in short story collections. Back in college, we read a whole bunch of, I don't know if this is the real term for them, but we called them linked short stories, where it was a collection of stories that maybe didn't directly impact one another, but they were maybe set in the same world, or a side character from one became the main character in the next. There was one that I loved by Edwidge Danticat called The Dew Breaker. And in that, you start with the daughter of some immigrants who's going to go sell her art. Second story is her father in the 90s, who has been in New York City for a few years, and his wife just arrived off the boat. The third story, I believe, is the mother. And then as you go further on, you see people they affected, neighbors, or the preacher in Haiti, and where they grew up, and eventually back all the way to where they initially meet during this big dramatic moment in Haiti. And it was just this really cool structure. I loved it so much. the first book that I published like 8 years ago followed that very explicitly, was like, I want to do that. With this project, it was more like I was interested in a setting that was cyberpunk, but in rural and remote places. Like I know what Night City looks like. I know what Chiba City looks like. What does it look like out in the mountains or on like this little remote island somewhere? How does it look when the characters are not trying to constrain AI or fight the big corporation? Those things are around still, but they're just doing their own thing. They're taking care of their family, or they're trying to make rent. Like these really simple stories. Like I was inspired more by literary fiction than I was by speculative fiction when it comes to like the driving plots. So that very naturally led me back to short story collections, because I wanted to tell smaller scale stories. And I think if I were to write an entire book about somebody trying to make rent, that would become kind of old very quickly. But in a couple of like shorter formats, it can really prove to like be a real gut punch, whether it like works out, but not in the way that you would like, or somebody has to maybe betray someone in order to make ends meet or something. Like like I said, I don't think I could necessarily carry that on in a way that I liked in a long format, but in short formats, that just fit really well, and it allowed me to do more stuff and explore the world more.
Oh, for sure. And I like, as somebody that has recently released a short story collection, I love that concept of shorter things can pack a way tighter punch on a very smaller theme. Like even going to my single post horror stories there, it's like that's why I love doing those, is because I can condense one emotion into one short ass thing, and you feel that one emotion, and that carries you, and that resonates more than the grander stories. So yeah, I love collections, man. I think that's so awesome. I'm very excited to read it, especially here in Cyberpunk drops. Oh, it's tickling all the right things, man. Oh.
Yeah, no, it's been such a fun project. I actually I've been so pleasantly surprised. Like ARC reviewers are starting to come back now and tell me what they thought, and people are like comparing it to like Black Mirror and Love, Death and Robots and Red Rising, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? How is this happening?
You know what? Those are the types of things that you want to hear. Like that's
I'll take it.
Perfect marketing. That's the good shit. That's what you want.
Oh yeah, like yesterday I started to compile a list of the things that people had compared it to, because I have my own comparisons, but I think theirs are way better.
And it works better when you're not trying to brag on yourself, because I hate bragging about myself. I do, with a passion. But I'll gladly take something somebody else says.
Yeah, that's really been my approach. Is like I created a blurb that I thought it told you enough about the story to get you interested. And I got some cover art from Ixel, my illustrator, who did an amazing job, and put it in front of some people. And now that this is all coming in, I'm able to just kind of like reshare what they're saying and use that as my marketing, and like not have to feel too awkward about it, because it's like I'm just saying what they say.
I'm just the middleman now. Just
They're like I'm just the vessel for their kind words.
Let's now talk about the story that is in your anthology, or in your collection, but is also in an anthology, right?
It is so an anthology is like a bunch of authors came together. This is just a collection of stories by me.
But is one of those stories also appearing in the Alex Park? Yes, there we go.
The first story in the collection, Alone Together, that will be appearing in Rare, which is an anthology by Alex Parker Publishing. I'm not 100% sure when that's going to be out, but I think it will be out by the end of the year. It's like a whole collection of stories about, I think it's like focused on secrets and stuff. And that story in particular deals with people wiping their memory. So it's pretty secretive.
How did you kind of get into the anthology there?
I saw that they were doing a call for submissions, and I just happened to have one of the stories in this collection that kind of fit the bill. And so I reached out, and I was very upfront, like, I want to submit this, but I plan to include it in this collection. And I don't think that's really negotiable. Like, it's the story that begins the collection. I don't see it beginning any other way. And so I reached out, and I just kind of gave them this offer, and I was like, hey, like, I'm happy to work with you on this, and like, we can negotiate exactly how it works. But like, are you okay with this? And I think that this was possible in part just because Alex Parker is really small right now. They are just kind of getting the wheels spinning, as it were. They've got, I think, maybe one book that will be published very soon. They have a couple of things being worked on, but like, it's a very new operation. If it was like even like mid-tier publisher where like they have more staff, more things working, more things already out, I don't think that would have flown. But they needed submissions just as much as I needed to market my work. And so it ended up being a very good relationship. I've had some good talks with them over there. They helped me edit that story and really helped give it a little nice final coat of polish. They've been very kind about everything. And so it was just kind of this happy coincidence, basically, where I kind of stumbled into them at the right time when it worked for both of us. And I just sort of put it out there. And if they didn't take it, then it wouldn't really have changed my trajectory at all. But it did allow me to get one more person to look at the stories. And it is one more avenue where I can sort of say, like, because self-publishing, it's such a mixed bag. It's so easy to publish something that is not very polished or like hasn't been vetted very much. And so like that was a big concern of mine, where it's like, me coming on to the scene and just going through it all on my own, there's no way that anybody can see that it's necessarily vetted. So like, how do I do that? One of the ways was to get at least one of the stories published by somebody else. And so that kind of ticked a box for me that I didn't need, but was nice to have.
Definitely. No, that's a fantastic approach to go about doing it. And I love that. I love kind of the planning aspect of your creativity is very much in line with my own thoughts when it comes to these things. It's that nice mixture of the analytical and the creative, and it works out very good. I like that. Big fan.
I was not very analytical for a long time. I was kind of just focused on writing, and then late last year, after I went to Dragonsteel for work, we had just launched our reading app then, and we were sharing it with people and giving away some codes for books and stuff. It was just such a good experience, and I really wanted to go back there with my own work in 2025, and I still hope to be able to do that. And so that kind of like lit a fire into my ass, and is like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it well. And I've been fortunate enough, like, we talked about it briefly, but I work in a space that works with indie publishing. And we are not necessarily a publisher, but we have published a couple of books, and we work with indie authors daily to get their stuff onto our platform where they can publish it. And I'm just sort of constantly exposed to that. I've been in the space a little bit more now, and I have a better sense of what's going on, what I should be doing. And it took a while to get there, but definitely like one of the best decisions that I made was to start reaching out to people, asking questions, and treating it like a job, basically. Because if you just focus on the writing, then you'll never share it.
Perfectly said. I mean, yeah, no, that's the best way to look at it. Okay, so the problem with having this conversation with you is there's entirely too many avenues to discuss. and we're kind of only like gently nudging on each one of them because of time constraints. So we're going to move on from these topics to move on to a new topic, which is the world building and map design.
Sure.
Okay, so clear out all that other stuff.
No, I'm just cementing my myself for a part 2.
Technically what we could is okay. So this is going to be cut out right here. I'm cutting this part out right now, Chris. Marked. What I will do, because I've been doing it a lot for season 2 with authors, is actually having a specific interview just for the book. And it's kind of like a promo thing that you can then also add to your things to send out, where it kind of like will answer a lot of the questions that most people don't think of until they have it. I've got one for Sarah Burton coming. I've got one for Natalie Jacobson. There's a bunch coming, and yeah, so if you want to do that, I'm more than happy to kind of put that together.
Whatever you've got time for, I'm happy to help however I can.
Damn right.
Obviously, the book, I'll share as much as I can.
Actually, do you still have any ARC spots left? Because I could actually read it.
I can get you one, yeah.
Because as I did with them, I ARCed for both of them and did a review for them as well. So I would love to add you to that list.
Yeah, I'll get you a file after this is done.
Sounds good. Okay, so now we are moving on into world building and map making. So you've illustrated maps for novels like Season of the Dragon and Under a Pirate's Flag. The biggest question that I kind of have here, because it's something that has always plagued me when it comes to designing maps and stuff like that, how do you go from text to the visuals? Like, how does your brain kind of process that?
Yeah.
Is it a lot of back and forth?
I mean, I'll be honest, usually I just demand a sketch.
You know what? That works.
I just make the author draw something. And I tell them, like, it doesn't have to be good. You can literally do it on the back of a paper napkin, but like, give me a visual of like the general shape. That is not always possible. I have a friend through work who is making a map for a special edition of an ebook that we're working on right now. And the author didn't give him anything. She just said, like, certain things have to be near each other. And so he did a quick draft, and then I sort of jumped in afterwards and started advising him on like the design of the town and everything. So that's been a lot more, like, there's been a lot more communication around that kind of project. But yeah, typically if I can get any kind of sketch, I will do that. And I'll ask, like, you know, what places is this inspired by, if any? So like, for example, with the map for Under a Pirate Flag, that one, we'd like already built the world map. That was a project that the author and I did like a few years ago, sort of with the promise that I would give him a discount whenever I had to zoom in on a section. So like, you know, the way that I build maps, I can sort of start with a canvas already drafted when I am able to approach it in that way. So with that one, it was like very Mediterranean Sea inspired. And so I will look at like places like that, those coastlines, and like maybe maps from the period where the story might have taken place from that location. There was another one that I did recently for the same author who wanted to do a map of like just a single lake. And that one was very inspired by like the 18th century sort of exploratory survey maps of like New England, where people would travel like up the waterways and sketch out the coastline. And then on the map, there's just like blank spots everywhere else because they didn't go past the coastline. They don't know what's out there, which creates a very fun style. And so I sort of like was researching those maps and recreating that. That one was like very heavily based on an existing lake in Maine. And so I was referencing that a lot and like the lakes around it and stuff. So, I mean, it's going to vary for every project, but to sort of answer your question of like, how do you create that first draft? How do you get started when the author may not really necessarily know what they want? Just by like asking as many questions as you can about the inspiration for the setting and the characters and the plot and the time period, and then going out and finding references and creating something that they can look at and sort of tell you, you know, is it close?
Perfect. Oh, so good, so good. Tell me more about map design for authors and world builders.
Yeah, so that's a project. Probably going to be the next book that I release. Is a reference guide, basically, for people who are interested in map design and world building. It is not necessarily for anyone who wants to make maps. There will be a small section talking about, like, you know, the visual design of a map. But really, like, the majority of the book is about tectonic plates and international borders and you know, the structure of a map and how that's changed over time. Like looking back at some of the early maps from around like Greece, for example, they didn't know the rest of the world existed. So what do you put at the edges of the map? And also just like, you know, if you go look up T&O maps, like that is a whole genre of map design that does not match reality whatsoever, but it was a really good shorthand for the time and the place. So the book kind of is just a broad look at different aspects of geology, climate, history, biogeography, which was a fun rabbit hole to go down. Basically like how the map can affect the things that live there, from animals and plants, for example. Like Hawaii is an excellent example of this, how its isolation and its location has allowed different species from like the present day US, China, Japan, Australia, Central and South America have all kind of gathered in one place and adopted new traits to fit that new location. You know, there was a bird that is now extinct, the moa nalu, which arrived, and we're not entirely sure where it came from, but at some point after it arrived on the Hawaiian Islands, it became quite large. It lost its ability to fly because it had no predators and had no need to, and flying takes a lot of energy, burns a lot of calories. And so it started walking around instead, and it became one of the very few species that would eat leaves. And so it had a new ecological niche and was able to strip the leaves off the plants very easy because it evolved teeth on its bill. And we assume, because there's not a lot of info about like what actually happened, because it had no predators, it was probably very curious and very friendly. And so when the Polynesians arrived, who brought dogs, that kind of spelled the end for the moa nalu.
Sucks to be the nice guy.
Yeah. Which is just like, you know, and all of that happened because there happened to be a couple of islands out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And basically no other reason. There were some storms, I guess, who blew these things in.
So really, this is all just kind of incorporated within the book itself,
yeah.
and it's kind of going through all this, which is actually fantastic. I know quite a lot of people who love map making, and I think that is interesting. I'm very curious about it myself, not knowing anything about it beforehand.
Yeah.
I'm in.
It's really like an exploration of basically like critical thinking when it comes to your setting. Because like you could take that story of, you know, animals arriving on Hawaii and apply it to your own setting. You know, what, like, you know, it makes sense for there to be some islands kind of scattered around. What lives there? What is it close to? What might have washed ashore or flown in? If it's very close to something, Was there previously a land bridge? Like little questions like that, which like maybe don't matter to the plot necessarily, but they can help to flavor the story and make it feel really lived in and unique and thoughtfully considered, instead of just like, what a lot of authors will send me is like, there is this one straight coastline along the east and one along the west, and maybe there's like this impossible river cutting it in half, which is like, that's fine, but we can make it more interesting. We can do more with that.
No, I want pure 90-degree angles on my map.
Okay.
That's what I want.
That's
No, damn it, this is what we're doing.
Nara stories are like exactly that with their map. It's like very, very hard edges.
Hey, you know what?
Suspiciously the size of the page.
It's crazy. It's crazy. All right, so we got one final question here, then we're going to jump into the rapid fire.
Okay.
How... I know my answer for this, but I'm curious about yours. How do you stay inspired and avoid burnout while juggling so many different creative ventures?
Naps.
Solid answer.
I mean, I really don't know what else to say.
That's pretty much my answer.
I'm motivated to get back to Dragonsteel. I've only read one Sanderson book. I'm not a huge fan, but that environment was so fun and the people were so great. I want to get back there. I want to bring my own stuff. And I'm not going to rush myself to do it, but I'm also not going to half-ass it.
I love it. There's a goal, you know you need to achieve it, and fuck it, it's going to get done.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. I love that. All right, so we're going to jump into some rapid fire here before we wrap up the main conversation. We're going to start right off the bat with, are you a coffee or a tea person?
I've been drinking tea this whole time.
You son of a bitch, get out.
I've tried coffee like once or twice, and it's just never been...
Just stop talking now, dude. Stop talking now. I like you. You're a cool person, but now you're starting to ruin it. If you could master any other skill that you don't already have, what are you taking?
Skateboarding would be cool. I've never, like, I got on a friend's skateboard once, and it was just like the most uncomfortable experience that I've ever had in my life.
I was never good at skateboard, never good, and I hung out with the
but
skaters.
Like, to just be good at it.
I know, dude, it'd be awesome. Just mediocre. Just let me stay on.
Yeah.
What is one book, movie, or game that you've recently read, played, that you can't stop recommending?
Skin Thief by Susan Palumbo. I went in with like, I didn't really know what to expect, but I had interviewed her a while ago for Campfire, and she wrote short stories. She did like some horror stuff, and I didn't really have a lot of that on my shelf. So I was interested in getting some, and I was like, yeah, I'll support another indie author. So fucking good. Like, genuinely, like, I will recommend that book to anybody. Skin Thief, go check it out.
I'm down with just the name. That's fantastic. Where was I? There we go. Are you a morning creative or an evening creative?
I'm a whatever that day is creative.
Oh, you know what? That's one we haven't actually heard very often there. Who are... And this goes for any genre, just due to the fact that you are so many different areas and genres. What are your Mount Rushmore of creative people that inspire you?
I'm just gonna go with like the people whose work comes to mind first. Because I don't know if there's like specific people who are inspiring to me in a creative sense. It's more just like, wow, the thing they did was so cool. Like, I want to learn from that.
All right. Hit me with 4.
I think I'm not a huge fan of Stephen King, but I'm going to add him there because I respect what he's accomplished so much, and everything that I have read has been so good. Terry Pratchett, just he's incredible at what he's done. Brian McClellan is probably my favorite author. Just, he was the first person who I saw blend like technology and magic in a story. And I think Edwidge Danticat, who I mentioned earlier, would be the fourth. Just like every story that she writes is such a gut punch. It's so good.
Those are a solid four. I can't argue with any of those. What map is that you've designed is your favorite?
Probably the map of the world that I made for an old project that is no longer a thing. But I spent probably like a couple months just working on that map, and I'm still very proud of it. It's, I believe, like 22 by 11 inches, and it's massive. I made up so much bullshit for that thing, just to like add more countries and stuff. I'll send an image so you can include it in the video.
Sounds good to me. If you could live in one of the worlds you've mapped out, which one are you taking?
It's probably a cheap answer, but the one for Digital Extremities, it's just our world, but a little bit in the future. And there's some things that are not going well, but overall, people are just kind of living their lives. Every other world that I've mapped out, I think there's some very serious problems, like massive wars, usually. Not that we don't have that in our world, but like,
no, but
I'm talking about the entire world.
If you're stuck living in one of them, might as well be ours a little bit more in the future.
Yeah,
that's a solid answer. I can't argue.
It'd be fun to have like cybernetics or something, I guess.
Hell yeah, it'd be really good for my hip. Jesus.
Right?
All right. And then what is one writing trope that you secretly love to use?
I don't know if this is a trope. I'm very bad with tropes in general.
But
I do love the technique where like having a paragraph end with an ellipses and then the next one begin with an ellipses. It shows this kind of lingering thought that I really enjoy, and I used to use it way too much. I've pulled back a lot, but I still ignore my editors sometimes.
Sometimes you got to ignore the editors, man. You just have to. Okay, so then, Adam, this has been an incredible conversation. There's way too much to talk about. You are going to be coming back on to talk about more things more times.
If you insist.
In fact, I may actually have a spot for you in one of the seminars. I've been kind of tooling it over in the back of my head. So we'll talk about that one later. Okay. But before we wrap up the main part of this episode here, where can our listeners and viewers find you and your book?
Yeah, so you can find me at Adam C. Bassett on Twitter, Threads, Instagram, mostly the first two. I have a website, adamcbassett.com. There's a bunch of my maps up there. If you want to go look at those, you can check out the book. All that kind of stuff. And I've got a newsletter that you can find there as well if you would like to do that. And a Discord as well if you're into those. As for the book, you can get it pretty much everywhere. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Campfire, Apple Books as a ebook right now for pre-order. If you get it on Campfire, there's going to be some extra goodies there. We're going to have like behind the scenes stuff available for free. And then if you want to pay a couple bucks extra, you can get some exclusive art, and that's character art that a friend of mine did for every story, and I made maps for each of the stories. And you get a bonus piece of flash fiction as well. And the paperback will be out on the 24th as well, when everything else comes out.
Absolutely perfect. And thank you to everybody on YouTube, Spotify, and everywhere else the podcasts are done. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Remember to like, subscribe, do all that fun shit right there. As for everyone else that is part of the Patreon and the community, make sure to stay tuned as we're going to roll right into the Off the Record. I've been your host, Chris Corvan. You can find me everywhere at Chris of the Void. Remember, stay creative, stay inspired, and until next time, see ya.